Canada to present, or Austria to present working paper 270.
First.
Okay. Sorry about that. So we're going with working paper 42, which is Austria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll give you a brief overview of the working paper number 42 presented by Austria on behalf of EU member states and the other member states of the ECAC and by the Eurocontrol. All of us here are well aware that the emergence of cybersecurity threat has been accelerating over the recent years, reflecting a fast-spreading technology conquering our system of all stakeholders that will significantly change the way aviation will operate in the future. The enabling potential secure communication could be unlocked by the implementation of a number of wind concept, which will lead to significant operational and social economic benefit. The aviation system is highly interconnected and information travels globally. Therefore, a holistic and end-to-end approach must be taken to cybersecurity initiative in the aviation sectors. That will only be successful if aviation is understood as a system of systems, for which all members of the aviation community are accountable and share responsibility. The aviation system in the future does require a more concerned design and less individual evolution to maintain its resilience against cyber interference. Each organization in the aviation sector represents one system which comprises people, process, and products. An ESMS, Information Security Management System, is used to organize all organizational activity to minimize risk to the organization and its peace, and to ensure the resilience by proactively addressing weakness and limiting the level of impact an international electronic interaction may cause. It also supports the process of recovery to nominal operation. It should thus implemented in a comprehensive way such that it becomes part of the culture of the aviation community. When integrating system into more complex system of system structures, mutual confidence must be in place that each system behaves and intend and does not do anything else. In particular, it does not show any undesired behaviors. System creating of high level of risk for a community will thus require higher level of confidence. The trustworthiness concept addresses such level of confidence, which is designed to reflect the effectiveness of continuous protection against cyber threat. Connecting systems to each other requires the understanding of implication with respect to a resulting risk. Certain per combination of trustworthiness levels will be permissible to connect, and they will meet cybersecurity objective with acceptable risk levels. Particular consideration has to be given to aircraft transitioning through different airspace region within a short period of time. Adequate trustworthiness level between ATM-NS or ANS and the aircraft system will allow for safety and secure airspace use. On this basis, we invite the conference to recommend a number of actions which are mentioned in paragraph number 3.1 in the working paper 42. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for all of your attention.
Thank you, Romania. I now ask for the presentation of working paper 270.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Working Paper 270 further introduces the concept of a system of systems and establishes why such an approach is appropriate in the context of addressing cyber resilience in civil aviation. The paper also introduces the concept of secure by design and argues that the integration of this concept within the aviation system would improve the system's resilience. Implicit in the paper is an acknowledgement that cyber threats are not exclusive to aviation security. Rather, cyber threats represent a whole of systems issue around the protection of information and data in all parts of the aviation system. Principally, the paper seeks acknowledgement of the concept of systems and its applicability to the global aviation system. Moreover, the paper seeks agreement that to be inherently secure, or secure by design, a system of systems, including the global aviation system, requires ongoing coordination among managers of subsystems and among direct and indirect stakeholders. The paper encourages ICAO to develop a framework that requires and guides states to implement measures to mitigate the cyber threat and risk to civil aviation systems. The paper notes that this may result in the development of SARPs for several affected ICAO annexes. The paper emphasizes the highly integrated and information-based nature of the global aviation system. We therefore argue that cyber resilience initiatives in the aviation sector must take a holistic and end-to-end approach. A holistic end-to-end approach can be successful only if aviation is understood as a system of systems. Responsibility for the resilience of the aviation system therefore includes both direct and indirect stakeholders. The development of a holistic end-to-end approach to achieving cyber resilience can and should include information and communication technology supply chains, including subcomponents and subsystem integration. The paper emphasizes that cyber resilience must be an ongoing consideration as new vulnerabilities accompany the evolution toward interconnected and interoperating information systems. Therefore, the development and maintenance of cyber resilience across the aviation system of systems requires continued coordination among all stakeholders. In order for the aviation system of systems to achieve resilience to cyber threats, the paper argues that cybersecurity considerations must be incorporated from the beginning of system development, as opposed to retroactively. While most current security standards focus on mitigating measures taken within the organizational context, this paper argues that there is a need to adjust the focus of mitigating measures to include measures that must be taken from an interorganizational perspective as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Canada. I now invite Cameroon to present Working Paper 282 on behalf of ASECNA.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chairman. Good day, everyone. I have the pleasure of presenting WP 282 on behalf of the 18 member states of ASECNA. The paper highlights the importance for states and ANSPs to deploy cybersecurity and resilience systems for ATMs in order to support their integration and interoperability, which is key for implementation of a seamless airspace. It also aims to update the conference on the actions taken by ASECNA since 2016 and the relevant challenges regarding the protection of ATM systems against the new threats, such as cyber attacks. As you know, the civil aviation sector is dependent on technology and communication information systems, and this dependence is increasing with the need for data sharing and systems interoperability, as well as the implementation of SWIM, which are based on information technologies supported by IP, Internet Protocol. The data exchanged between the systems, ground-ground, ground-air, including ATS, Inter-Facility Data Communications, AIDC, as well as the AMHS, which is ATS Message Handling System, and ATS Surveillance Systems. These are key elements to manage air traffic in a safe, fluid, and orderly fashion. So, also for the ANSP, integrity and data privacy will be major factors for safety and efficiency of aviation. The threat that cyber incidents pose to civil aviation is changing rapidly and constantly. The malicious intent of cyber terrorists ranges from disruption of business continuity to information theft for various reasons. The threat can easily evolve to reach critical civil aviation systems around the world. Taking into account this threat, a risk-based approach in civil aviation is the optimal way to prevent cyber incidents rather than managing them after the fact. ASECNA has done an assessment of its maturity level in 2016 and developed an action plan for the implementation of a systemic approach for managing cybersecurity and resilience of CNS and ATM systems, which will be an integral part of its implementation plan, taking into account operational measures under the security management system and CNS and ATM systems. In compliance with operational measures under the SEMS, taking into account cybersecurity, and I'm referring to implementation of the action plan. It includes cybersecurity and resilience of CNS and ATM. In compliance with the provisions implemented through ASBU, a communication system must be put in place, including ATS messaging, taking into account the threats in the region. These could become factors that could be disruptive to these cooperation initiatives. And the conclusion is found in Part 3. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Cameroon. May I ask Kansu to present Working Paper 171?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a pleasure to introduce to you Working Paper 171 by Kenzo. The Introduction System-Wide Information Management System, SWIM, will change the way that aviation partners will share information. SWIM is about dynamic, effective and timely information management that will be constantly available to aviation stakeholders. These requirements refer not only to efficient, resilient and interoperable systems, but also to efficient organizations, appropriate common legal frameworks and effective governance. The only way a system like this can properly work is if the users can fully trust the information that will be presented and the stakeholders that produce this information. For this reason, we applaud the work of the ICAO ENNOVA project that is working on a draft concept of operations for a trust network that we discussed just before the coffee break. However, this is not enough. Cybersecurity should be embedded in a solid cybersecurity culture in every organization from top to bottom. The design of SWIM and its components should be based on a security by design and security through life cycle, as also stated just before on Working Paper 270. Further, because of the connectivity of every user and every state, the security of the system depends on efficient, timely and complete sharing of all information regarding cyber vulnerabilities, attacks, solutions and contingencies to all users. Only this can make the system fully resilient. The conference is invited to accept the actions as placed in this paper in the executive summary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. May I ask the states to support this paper? Thank you. I now ask COSESNA to present Working Paper 279. Confirm Nicaragua will present on behalf.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. We have the honor of presenting this working paper, number 279, on behalf of COSESNA. We would like to highlight that the issue of cyber resilience is of deep interest to us, as it allows the organization to address adverse conditions and eventual attack against assets that are essential to the functioning of agencies, companies, or administrations. We have already provided for a project to create a system in order to establish the value of investments, good practices, and to strengthen the capacity of our services. The idea is to optimize technology and information that ensures balance between investments, resources, and this is how we have established a strategic communications plan to create values as defined. And based on a certain balance based on benefits, based on costs, based on optimization of resources, cybersecurity is globally transforming and could have a considerable impact. Therefore, we have to be well prepared to face the possibility of daily interventions in operations, which is why the conference is asked to turn to the civil aviation community in order to be duly prepared to provide an effective response to cyber incidents that may occur, and to recognize the fact that cyber threats arise on the internet, and therefore have practices in place that would then be based on worldwide standards and practices. Thank you.
Thank you, Nicaragua. Before discussion, does the Secretariat have any clarification? No clarification from the Secretariat. The floor is open for discussion. Switzerland.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Switzerland would like to express its full support to Working Paper 270 presented by Canada. The availability of accurate and timely information and the functioning of safety-critical system has always been of utmost importance for a safe and secure civil aviation. While recognizing that digitalization and automation have the potential to transform the whole aviation system by considerably enhancing its performance, these technological advancements put new challenges with regard to ensuring and maintaining safety and security of all aviation stakeholders. More and more aviation stakeholders will have to rely on interconnected and interoperating information systems. Therefore, a globally coordinated approach involving all relevant stakeholders to managing system interaction will be key. These considerations are not only valid in the operation of interconnected systems, but also in the earliest phase of their development, by ensuring an integration of security by design as part of initial system design. Finally, we believe that ensuring a safe and secure aviation can only be ensured with the development of a common framework that guides states to implement measures to mitigate cyber threats and risk by developing standards and recommended practices in the relevant ICAO annexes. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Switzerland. Belize.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Belize is a contracting state of COSESNA. Hereby indicates its full support to Working Paper 279. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Belize. Sweden.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Sweden support the Working Paper 42 presented by Romania regarding the cybersecurity in the aviation. And we also support the stated recommendations in paragraph 3.1. We agree with Romania the need for organizations to manage their individual cybersecurity risks by means of an information security management system, and we also see the benefits of an information sharing in this area. The cybersecurity area is a good example of a subject which must be treated with a multidisciplinary approach as described in this paper. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Austria.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Austria supports the Working Paper 282 to urge states and service providers to implement systematic and structured approaches to cybersecurity in order to build resilience against cyber threats on ATM systems. Sharing experience among the community is proposed in this paper, is highly welcomed and should be well coordinated. Concerning the working paper 279, Austria duly note the recommendations presented by COSECNA to be well prepared to generate an effective response to cyber incidents, including the creation of awareness at all levels. The use of the ISO standard 27000 and risk assessment methodologies is a good way ahead. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Austria. Finland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Acknowledging that the cyber resilience of the aviation system depends on continued coordination among all relevant stakeholders, Finland fully supports the working paper 270 presented by Canada. Holistic end-to-end approach with acknowledgement of systems concept is vital in order to successfully respond to the cybersecurity challenges we are facing. We also believe that to keep aviation safe and secure, it is important to develop a common framework with guidance to states to mitigate cyber threats and risks in form of ICAO recommended practices and standards. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Dominican Republic.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We support fully working paper 270 presented by Canada and the countries of the EU, Eurocontrol, and others. I wanted to mention line C of paragraph 3. We would like to support also COSECNA's paper 279, as well as paper 171 from CANSO, highlighting line D of the proposed actions. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Norway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning to all. Norway would like to express support to working paper 42 presented by Romania. Like commented already by Sweden, we fully see the benefits of information sharing in the cybersecurity area. Norway would also like to underline the importance of trustworthiness and in particular provisions for inter-organizational trust as part of a wider, broader trust framework and to encourage their implementation as set out in recommendation 3.1 c. When I have the floor, Mr. Chairman, allow me also to have a comment on the working paper 27. Here we are. Norway, in that context, would like to express strongly support to working paper 270 presented by Canada. The working paper highlights that the aviation sector with many stakeholders, both direct and indirect, play a role in the functioning and maintenance of individual subsystems and the system as a whole, with the understanding that a system can be comprised of products, people and processes. It is of great importance to acknowledge the concept of system in aviation, in particular when developing, integrating, operating and maintaining subsystems that are secure by design. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Norway. Spain.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We support working paper 279 presented by COSECNA on cyber resilience. We support this approach on this issue, and we believe we need to avoid any problems in being ready to respond to cyber incidents which may occur in the normal course of operation. We understand the progress which has been made, and we look forward to the implementation of the working framework that was outlined in the paper. We would also like to support working paper 42, which was presented by Romania. Thank you.
Thank you. United Arab Emirates.
Shukran, Sayyid al-Rais.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The UAE would like to support WP 270 presented by Canada, as well as the paper 169 presented by Council. We would like to reiterate the necessity that the ICAO would develop the SARPs as in the cyber security and cyber resilience based on the cyber conference that was held in my country last year. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Honduras supports working paper 279 presented by COSESNA and by Nicaragua. We invite the aviation community to prepare for cyber incidents, and we underscore the importance of cybersecurity governance to be able to handle the threats. Thank you.
Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Saudi Arabia would like to express its support to recommendation B and C of working paper 270 presented by Canada. Saudi Arabia has the view that the integration of measures and rules during the design is the primary means to protect air navigation system and ensure proper protection against cyber threats. Thank you.
Thank you. Senegal.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, Senegal supports working paper 282 presented by Cameroon on the implementation of measures against cyber threats. Also, we support the providing support to member states and the sharing of security and safety information, taking into consideration the specificities of the harmonized procedures and ATM systems which are interconnected and integrated. Thus, Senegal encourages states and ANSPs to implement systemic and structured cybersecurity measures to ensure cooperation among states, ANSPs, in the implementation of air navigation plans. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. IATA.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman. IATA can support the premise of working paper 42, being a multidisciplinary approach, information sharing, trustworthiness, and trust framework. And agree with the ability of ANSPs to upgrade appears to be slow, but we do not agree that airlines are able to adapt quickly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ayato. As we prepare to sum up, Norway, do you wish to speak again?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Norway would also like to underline that the principle as presented by Kant. You don't hear me? Yes? That the principle as presented by Council in working paper 171 can be fully supported. It is paramount that we start to address cybersecurity from the beginning and that the systems will be suitable for operation at all times, and to achieve this goal, guidance material is required. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Norway. AFCAC.
AFCAC commends ASECNA for the proactive initiatives as presented in working paper 282 by Cameroon. In particular, the assessment of ASECNA's maturity level in 2016 and its associated action plan for the implementation of a systemic approach for managing cybersecurity and resilience of CNS and the ATM system is applauded. We therefore encourage states, NSPS, to to take on the challenges brought out to implement protective measures for equipment and services, considering the interoperability of ATM systems in operational centers in Africa and beyond. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Afka. We will sum up now. Okay, thank you. With regards to working papers 42, 270, 282, 171, and 279, the following summary is provided. The committee recognized that aviation is a system of systems that requires collaboration and coordination among stakeholders to ensure cyber resilience. That states should pursue methods for information security based upon international standards. The committee highlighted that ICAO should develop and promote policies and frameworks related to cyber resilience, and that these should be aligned or integrated with existing management systems. And the committee recognized the need for the aviation community to be prepared to respond to cyber events. The committee recommended that states and international organizations should facilitate information sharing related to cyber incidents and threats, and that this sharing should also involve a broad set of non-aviation stakeholders. The committee took note of actions put in place by some states to face the challenge regarding the protection of ATM systems against cyber threats. Are there any remarks to the summary? Okay, thank you. Okay, thank you. We'll now move to batch number 3, cyber information sharing. And may I ask the United Arab Emirates to present working paper 90.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Assalamu alaikum. Good morning. With the evolution of ATM systems and interconnectivity globally, it is essential that adequate cybersecurity measures are in place against an already identified threat. To fully understand the best approaches to be taken globally, states should share information and knowledge of events. The Middenberg ATM Data and Security Action Group, led by the UAE, are developing in coordination with other states a security baseline for various systems. The ATM Data and Cybersecurity Portal, a prototype, allows states to share information and knowledge about actual events. The ADCS, a prototype portal, is currently available for testing purposes only at this stage and not intended to be a comprehensive solution for cybersecurity, but rather a platform where cyber events can be logged, information related to cyber attacks are shared, feeding into discussions held on various cyber topics, and also provide the basis of evidence for the development of common system solutions. The prototype portal has been developed from scratch and is fully customizable and is now available online. To ensure the system is not abused by the public, access is restricted to approved airspace industry users only. The site is hosted on a dedicated and secured server at the General Civil Aviation Authority, Sheikh Zayed Air Navigation Center, and can be accessed through the website highlighted in the working paper. The conference is invited to agree the following recommendations. Support the work achieved by the ICAO Middle East Air Traffic Management Data Security Action Group and encourage states to register and provide feedback on the ATM Data and Cybersecurity Portal prototype. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, UAE. I now ask the United States to present working paper 62.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am pleased to present working paper 62 on behalf of the United States. Cyber incidents can affect the global aviation community or individual systems at many levels. These incidents may jeopardize communications and information exchanges between various aviation stakeholders, affecting safety and security, and damaging aviation business continuity. The ability to share cyber-related information and the application of strong standardized methods of securing data is essential. The FAA recently conducted a Caribbean regional cybersecurity tabletop exercise that was a facilitated discussion of scenarios in a formal, stress-free environment. It was an open, thought-provoking exchange of ideas on various issues regarding a hypothetical, simulated cyber incident that was used to enhance general awareness, validate current plans and procedures, and assess the systems and activities that lie within the framework of cyber incident response and recovery within the region. The exercise is also focused on policies, plans, personnel contingencies, information sharing, governmental coordination, and identifying gapped or unclear or overlapping responsibilities. The tabletop exercise brought together the FAA and Caribbean states to ensure that independent and shared information systems and networks successfully operate with cyber resiliency. The cyber tabletop was a high-level discussion focused on policy and practices. Objectives for this exercise were to develop and promote common understanding of cyber threats, vulnerabilities, and resultant risk across the aviation ecosystem, identify gaps in state policies and operations, identify and promote regional partnerships, and a mechanism for information sharing on emerging threats and incidents response. With the successful accomplishment of the objectives and positive response, the United States seeks to utilize the exercise as a model for similar events within the ICAO regions. The conference is invited to endorse the concept of regional cyber tabletop exercises, conducted in cooperation with ICAO regional offices and member states, and requests that ICAO headquarters create a repository of scenarios and lessons learned that is available to member states for development of regional cyber tabletop exercises. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, United States. The committee is asked to note information papers 160 and 262. Was there any clarification from the Secretariat? Okay, there's none. Floor is open for the discussion. Finland?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Finland supports working paper 90 and its recommendations presented by United Arab Emirates. The initiative described in the paper provides a good start in the collection of sharing of cyber events across the civil aviation industry in a collaborative manner. I would like to note that there are other similar initiatives. As an example, I would like to mention the European Centre for Cyber Security, with objective to serve as an information sharing and management platform as a key enabler for implementing a resilient aviation cyberspace. Thank you.
Thank you, Finland. Brazil?
Good afternoon, Chairman. Brazil supports working papers 90 and 62. This is very interesting exercise within the regions. It's a very interesting concept. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Council.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Kenzo fully supports Working Paper 90 from the UAE and applauds their approach to share and coordinate information on cybersecurity events in a confidential way, including ANSPs and industry users. We also support Working Paper 62 from the USA and the proposal for regional cyber tabletop exercises. Kenzo sees this as a good proposal to develop a common understanding of cyber threats, risks and cyber incident mitigation among aviation partners. Thank you.
Thank you, Council. I'm seeing no more discussion, so we'll try to sum up. Okay, Nigeria.
Thank you very much, Chair. Nigeria supports the Working Paper 62 presented by the United States and also suggests the need for conduct of security assessments, safety assessments, as well as inclusion of contingency plans on cyber threats. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Dominican Republic.
Gracias, señor presidente.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We support papers 90 and 62, which were just presented in this batch of papers, especially paper 62 presented by the United States. It is a country which is conducting these exercises, and we welcome this initiative and hope that such exercises can be used in other regions. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Saudi Arabia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Saudi Arabia support Working Paper 90 by United Arab Emirates, Working Paper 62 by United States. Saudi Arabia also support the approach to share information on cyber threats and incidents to learn from these events and build additional capability to strengthen resilience against any cyber event. Thank you.
Thank you, Rwanda.
Thank you. Rwanda supports Working Paper 62 presented by the FAA. The FAA's proposal for ICAO to endorse the concept of regional cyber tabletop exercises conducted in cooperation with ICAO regional offices and member states to enhance general awareness and validate current plans and procedures. Thank you.
Thank you, Rwanda. With regards to Working Papers 90 and 162, the committee noted that to increase awareness on cyber resilience, tabletop exercises should be promoted at the global and regional levels. The committee acknowledged the need for ICAO to maintain a repository of scenarios and lessons learned to aid in the development of tabletop exercises. And the committee encouraged states and international organizations to facilitate information sharing through appropriately designed channels at the regional and global levels. Are there any remarks to the summary? I see none, so that concludes agenda item, sub-item 5.4. Okay, thank you. We will start on sub-item 5.2, operations below 1,000 feet. We'll do the presentations and then break for lunch. Please note that Working Paper 41 will be moved from this item to agenda item 5.3. So we start with the presentation of Working Paper 5 by the Secretary. Secretary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Working Paper 5 describes the opportunities and challenges linked to the emergence of a range of aviation activities in very low altitude airspace, typically at 1,000 feet above ground level and below, particularly in urban and suburban environments. Paragraph 1 recalls that such activities include the operation of small unmanned aircraft, commonly referred to as drones, as well as new developments such as flying taxis, operating along with existing airspace users, such as manned helicopters, paragliders, and other airspace users. Paragraph 2 highlights that unmanned aircraft, referred to as drones, are expected to support the development of goods delivery business models, as well as inspection, monitoring, and recreational activities. This paragraph also addresses some of the challenges associated with the rapid development of aviation technology planned to operate in very low altitude airspace, in particular with respect to aircraft certification, air traffic management, and infrastructure development. This paragraph describes the efforts of the organization for the proper harmonization of regulations on unmanned aircraft systems that remain outside of the international IFR framework. Finally, the paragraph describes activities that the organization should continue conducting to support the safe and coordinated development of aviation activities at very low altitude, particularly in urban and suburban environments, including in the vicinity of and into airports. Action for the committee is in paragraph 3. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. I ask Brazil to present working paper 88.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, everyone. Working paper 88 from Brazil, unmanned traffic management and autonomous operation. The unmanned aircraft system market appeals to promote the increase of very low-level drone operation in a limited space with other users and especially over cities, which stress the need to discuss and decide on a reasonable way to provide organized and systematic UAS traffic management. In order to provide a safe and orderly system management for this demand, some air navigation service providers and development institutions have conceived an operational as well as technical concept named UTM. The wide variety of drone operations features provides a challenge to current ATM and air traffic flow management to handle the drone operational application. In addition, the foreseen traffic density of drones is far beyond the capabilities of ATM systems in use, which were never designed to handle many situations of dense traffic, widely varying performance characteristics. The UTM system could be developed using autonomy characteristics that include self-configuration, self-optimization, and self-protection. As a consequence, many UTM concepts and studies on this issue reveal the need of some UAS autonomous level in order to provide management capabilities of this new environment. The manual on AirPass describes that autonomous operations are not within the scope of the document and have excluded this kind of discussion from the AirPass panel scope. Considering this, the conference is invited to agree to the following recommendation: that the conference, A, evaluate the possibility of constituting a study group or advisory group to discuss issues regarding UTM autonomous operation. B, recommend our states to share the knowledge from UTM autonomous operation initiatives. C, request ICAO to provide SARPs or best practice related to UTM autonomous operation to harmonize the initiatives among signatory states. And D, requests ICAO regional office to actively cooperate with states at regional level from development to implementation of future UTM. Mr. Chairman, at this point, we would like to take advantage of the occasion to propose slight modifications on items A and C of the recommendation as follows. A, modify to evaluate the possibility of discussing issues regarding UTM autonomous operations after multiple states and regions have sufficient experience with UTM deployment to progress global guidance material. This could be done in a study group under the auspice of the GAMP. And C, modify to, after states and regions have had sufficient time to test and validate UTM concepts, request ICAO to provide SARPs or best practice related to UTM and autonomous operations to harmonize the initiatives amongst the signatory states. That concludes my presentation. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, Brazil, can you just repeat the amendments, please?
Sure, Mr. Chairman. Letter A of the recommendation, evaluate the possibility of discussing issues regarding UTM autonomous operations after multiple states and regions have sufficient experience with UTM deployment to progress global guidance material. This could be done in a study group under the auspice of the GAMP. Should I proceed?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. C, modify to, after states and regions have had sufficient time to test and validate UTM concepts, request ICAO to provide SARPs or best practice related to UTM and autonomous operations to harmonize the initiatives amongst signatory states.
Thank you, Brazil. The amendments are noted, and please coordinate with the Secretary to make sure they got it correctly. Canada, please present working paper 118.
Mr. Chairperson, this was an information paper we can present if you wish to.
No, I do not wish.
Sorry.
UAE. Okay, working paper 97 by UAE.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The United Arab Emirates presents working paper 97 on tactical risk assessments for unauthorized unmanned aerial vehicle intrusions. The United Arab Emirates is a leader in unmanned aircraft system development and innovation. Several advanced projects are underway, and through extensive research and development, the General Civil Aviation Authority has a policy, a flexible risk-based regulatory approach to support growth and innovation while maintaining safety. Nevertheless, while a level of control is maintained over commercial and experimental operations, the increase of small personnel unmanned aerial vehicles by the general public has been a significant cause for concern. The intrusion by small unmanned aerial vehicles into controlled airspace, particularly near major airports, combined with the lack of air traffic control experience in dealing with such events, caused multiple instances of large airspace restrictions or airport closures, which in themselves introduce additional hazards into the system. The penetration by an unauthorized aircraft into a portion of controlled airspace without prior permission from the air traffic services provider may result in multiple safety, efficiency, environmental, and security risk concerns. Consequently, the development and implementation of comprehensive contingency measures where the risk is tactically analyzed and assessed through collaborative decision-making processes between air traffic control management, supervisors, air traffic controllers, officers, and other relevant personnel and stakeholders should manage the safety and security risks to an acceptable level while minimizing the impact on normal operations by unauthorized aircraft. In November 2016, the UAE General Civil Aviation Authority published Safety Decision 16/2016 to provide regulatory framework and guidance to the air navigation service provider on how to tactically risk assesses intrusions into controlled airspace and take mitigation actions while ensuring those measures are proportionate to the risk posed by intruders, and that as little additional stress is introduced into the system. The entire process has been highly successful in reducing the adverse impact on intrusion aircraft while maintaining an appropriate level of safety. The tactical risk assessment process is contained in the appendix to the working paper. The conference is invited to review the contents of the working paper and appendix and to consider the referral of the module to the remotely piloted aircraft system panel, the unmanned aircraft systems advisory group, and the air traffic management operations panel, as appropriate for further consideration as global guidance material. States are also invited to consider the adoption of such a model into state regulations. In this case, the UAE is willing to provide any assistance necessary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, UAE. May I ask the United States to present working paper 54?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm pleased to present working paper 54 on behalf of the United States. Before I present this paper, I'd like to note that we received the recommendations in this paper, we revised the recommendations in this paper, but unfortunately did not get posted on ICAO's website. Therefore, I'd like to request the chair to ensure that the new recommendations are captured within the report, and I'll read those shortly. At the 39th session of the Assembly in 2016, states requested ICAO to address the rapidly evolving small UAS sector in an innovative and flexible manner. In response, ICAO reconvened the UAS Advisory Group, or the UAS AG, to develop a common framework for UTM systems to assist states as they consider developing UTM capabilities. The United States commends the contribution of the UAS AG toward developing high-level recommendations to assist states in providing services for UAS operations and identifying core boundaries of UTM systems, and recommends that the conference acknowledge this significant work. The United States believes that the U.S. AG has now accomplished its defined work program and established a foundation for future incorporation of a UTM framework into the Global Air Navigation Plan. At this juncture, it is time for states and regions to further progress the deployment of UTM concepts and services. As Canada clearly points out in their information paper, WP 118, and Europe's working paper 41, in recommendation A, regarding facilitating trials and validations of these new entrants. Once sufficient regional experience with UTM deployment is available, the UAS AG could be reconvened to progress global guidance material in support of UTM implementation. Any further UTM activities undertaken by ICAO should also be accomplished under the GAMP. This approach is appropriate for several reasons. It ensures that the GAMP includes this important modernization topic in its guidance to states and regions. It allows states and regions to approach modernization guidance in a common way as states continue to work on assimilating UAS operations into their respective national airspace systems. It utilizes the GAMP cross-panel coordination process to ensure that UAS AG concepts are both considered by and consistent with ICAO panel recommendations and work products for constituent CNS, ATM, SARPs, PANs, and guidance material. And would address recommendation B in working paper 41 presented by Europe to define and promote core principles for UTM and for interoperability between UTM and ATM. The United States asked the conference to acknowledge the significant work accomplished by the UAS AG, transition the UTM core principles, assumptions, and potential services developed by the US AG into the global strategic level within the game's multi-layer structure, and sunset the UAS AG until multiple states and regions have sufficient experience with UTM deployment to progress global guidance material. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, United States. And I know that working paper 41 was moved to another agenda item, 5.3. And I now ask the United States to present working paper 56.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would like to acknowledge that this working paper was presented at the 37th Legal Committee meeting held September 4th through 7th here at ICAO headquarters. During that meeting, the Secretariat found a solution to address the issues highlighted in this paper that I would like to share briefly here for the benefit of the conference. As you know, this paper identified a gap in existing provisions that required action by ICAO and states to enable continued progress in the safe integration of unmanned aircraft systems. Specifically, the present framework governing high seas operations does not provide for states and/or their appropriate authorities to establish procedures enabling non-certificated UAS to access this airspace. During the legal committee meeting, the U.S. delegation presented the working paper and sought an ICAO interpretation to address non-certificated UAS operations over the high seas and to enable states and/or the appropriate authorities who provide air traffic services in international airspace to develop and implement procedures for those operations. The Secretariat also presented a working paper on RPAS that also addressed high seas airspace. That working paper presented a solution that was approved by the legal committee, which I outline here. In order to permit certain low-risk, high seas UAS operations in compliance with the Chicago Convention, the Air Navigation Bureau and the Legal Affairs and External Relations Bureau are together formulating a proposed amendment to Annex 2. The object of the amendment is to give blanket approval to UAS operations in high sea airspace that conform to a pre-specified low-risk operational envelope, provided they are also approved by and meet the requirements of the state of the operator and/or the state of registry. The proposed blanket approval will thus effectively bring these UAS operations legally and, most importantly, safely within the ambit of the convention as ICAO continues to integrate RPAS into civil aviation and oversee global harmonization of states' domestic UAS regulations. In the light of the accomplishment of the 37th Legal Committee meeting, the United States requests that this conference adopt the same solution as agreed to by the Legal Committee. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for allowing me to present this paper on behalf of the United States.
Thank you, United States. That brings us to the end of working papers by states. We now have international organizations. I'll take the break now. We will resume with the presentation by the international organization, any clarification by the Secretariat, and the discussion. We still resume at 1400. Thanks.